We're open to discussions right now. That's what I'm doing here in Berlin, and we're meeting with many companies who have shown interest, either from the orphan perspective or perhaps from the diabetic perspective.
Hi, my name is Mike Ward. I'm the head of content at Script and the Pink Sheet. We're here in Berlin at the Bio-Europe meeting, where pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, investors all get together to understand, what the latest trends are, take the pulse of the industry, but also ostensibly to do deals, whether through partnerships or through investments. Some of the biotech companies, they have programs that are pretty well developed, and they come to partner. But every now and then what happens is you get a biotech company that comes up with some surprising data. I'm joined by Kathy Harrison, who's the CEO of Dimerix. It's an Australian biotech company based in Melbourne, out of the University of Western Australia, founded in 2004. You guys have been working in the CKD space, but I understand that in one of your trials you've got some sort of surprising data. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Could you share that with us?
Yes, absolutely. Some quite surprising data. We did a Phase IIa study primarily looking at safety. Safety was the primary endpoint, of course, looking secondary endpoints of efficacy, looking at reduction in proteinuria. We looked across a broad range of CKD patients, and what we found was that when we analysed the data in detail, that there was a particular cohort, and that was the diabetic nephropathy cohort. We only had 10 patients, but even on the back of 10 patients, in that group, a straight averaging of their reduction in proteinuria over the 28 weeks saw them reduce on average by 36% of the albumin-creatinine ratio, which is really quite outstanding, and it was a statistically significant result, which was not something we were expecting. What we found was that of that group, 5 out of the 10 patients, so fully half of them, reduced their proteinuria by more than 50%.
Right.
Bearing in mind that this is all taken on the background of standard of care. They were all on stable irbesartan for 3 months prior to commencement of the study. So this is a really significant result, and what it's meant that is that as a company who's primarily focusing on developing for the orphan indication, FSGS, that seeing this result in the diabetic cohort has meant that our next study, we will do a combination. We will power the study in the primary endpoints against that diabetic group, but we'll also be looking at FSGS and IgA nephropathy patients as our orphan strategy to continue on our own development path.
So I'm just trying to sort of think. So within sort of the senior management of your company, you had these results. How quickly were you able to come to the conclusion that this is something that we actually really need to do something with?
Yeah, it was very apparent when we did the analysis. So we were looking at the data after we'd looked at the responder group and saw that 5 of the 6 responders were out of the diabetic group. And then we looked across the group and saw that a number of them had reductions that were not far off that 50%. And actually just literally crunched the numbers. It was very apparent that this was something that we couldn't ignore, and that this was something that we would need to pursue. Diabetic nephropathy is obviously a huge indication. There are 3% approximately of people in the US have diabetic nephropathy, and so we believe that by conducting another study, a placebo-controlled, double-blind, powered study, that will give us an opportunity to out-license that diabetic nephropathy part of the program.
But with a surprising result, what did you do about sort of transferring or reallocating resources? Because presumably you had a plan for what you were doing with the program in CKD, and you sort of say in the orphan indications. What has this meant in terms of sort of, the resources of the company now that you have this new opportunity?
Look, I think primarily the effect has been on the next study. So the next study will have a significant diabetic nephropathy cohort. So that means that it's larger and will require more resources than we had originally planned. However, in terms of the whole development program, the development program will still continue in terms of CMC and all of the other non-clinical studies. And our expectation, like I say, we won't be pursuing diabetic nephropathy through pivotal studies. So this is really just an interim measure in this particular trial to get some more data to open up that opportunity as quickly as possible.
And you have the resources to be able to do that?
So we're reviewing that at the moment. We're reviewing what the costs will be. We're a listed company in Australia, so we will be reviewing our capital requirements as we always do, and from time to time we may need to raise money to pursue programs, but that's all in process.
And so the plan would be to bring on a partner at what stage? Before you start the Phase IIb trial, would it be?
The Phase IIb, yes. We're open to discussions right now. That's what I'm doing here in Berlin, and we're meeting with many companies who have shown interest, either from the orphan perspective or perhaps from the diabetic perspective. However, we fully realise that sometimes companies prefer to wait for that full 2B efficacy data, and so that's why we have the plans to ensure we have the resources to get to the end of that stage and potentially partner then. Alternately, the reason for pursuing an orphan indication is that with positive 2B results, we'll then be in a position to raise the capital to then go into a pivotal Phase III, which is much smaller, of course, in an orphan indication.
And sort of conclude. And so, where are you with the programs with orphan indications? What sort of timeline are we looking at there?
Yep. So we've got orphan drug designation for FSGS for our program. We're expecting the Phase IIb to be completed by about the middle of 2019. And our discussions with the FDA have indicated that we will be able to take those data, assuming they are positive, and go into a pivotal Phase III registrability study following that. So it's quite as with most orphans, it's a much truncated pathway.
Right, okay. Well, Kathy, thanks for coming up by.
Thanks very much.